Hey guys, JV here with the first episode of my Mass Effect Andromeda Pathfinder Guide series. Since I know a lot of you are about to start playing the game through EA Access, I want to gather 10 tips to help you get a head start in Andromeda. These are a variety of basic, useful things to keep in mind during the first few hours of your journey. Before we start, quick reminder that I'm uploading tons of Andromeda content, including tips and tricks guides, a stream playthrough, and multiplayer on this channel. So if that's something that interests you, be sure and subscribe. The first thing you'll do when starting the game is pick your training, because as we know, classes are gone traditionally in Andromeda. You're not going to pick a class and be stuck with your abilities. You're going to have a full suite of the abilities available to you. However, you do have to pick your training at the very beginning of the game. This determines a few things: your starting power, which is immediately unlocked and usable from the beginning of the game, and then 2 more powers that require a little bit more training otherwise, but the game says, hey, you know what? We're going to give it to you because you do have training in this area. For example, if I picked Technician as my training, my starting power would be Overload. I'd be able to use that immediately when I get into the game. My 2 unlocked skills would be Invasion and Team Support. If I didn't pick Technician and picked another training, then I'd have to put a lot of points into other abilities within the tech tree in order to unlock Invasion and Team Support, because those are kind of higher tier abilities, which means it does matter what you pick as your training because you get these really special, very powerful, unlockable skills. So long story short, classes do not exist in Andromeda, but your training does matter. It does have an effect, especially at the very beginning of the game, so choose wisely. In order to make your Pathfinder stronger, take on harder enemies, and really progress through the game, you'll need to gain experience. And of course, you'll want to maximize that experience gain however you can. And I've found through my 10 hours with the review copy of the game that the vast majority of the experience that you'll gain comes from quests, a lot more than killing enemies. As far as I could tell, I don't think there's any sick grinding spot or anything like that where you can just kill enemies that respawn over and over. I don't think that's the most efficient way to do things. So because it is through doing quests and actually, interacting with the world and finding interesting things, you'll want to talk to everyone. Absolutely everyone that you find, you want to go up to and talk to, see what they have to say, and a lot of the time they'll lead you to some sort of quest. The easiest way to find things to do in quests that will give you that experience is to look at the map. Everywhere that you'll be will actually have a map that you can open and look at. And so the 3 icons you're looking for are, number 1, the exclamation point. That's going to be someone who actually has a quest for you immediately. You just have to talk to them and they'll give it to you. Number 2 is a point of interest. This is just a general marker that shows, hey, there's something going on here that relates to a quest, whether you have it or not. Number 3 is a question mark, which is kind of like an undiscovered point of interest. You don't know what's there. It could lead to a quest. It may not, but it is something you should definitely check out because it has the potential of leading you to something that will gain you experience. Very early on, the game will teach you how to scan things with your Omni tool, and the way you know if something is new and you need to scan it is if it shows up as a bright red in the Omni tool. Once you've scanned an object, it is discovered, so usually you can't scan the same object multiple times, but I've actually found that you can. So my advice is to scan almost everything that you possibly can, and when you scan an object, you gain research points into one of 3 categories that has to do with crafting and something we're about to talk about. But I do want to make an important point here. Scanning is required for some points in the story. You will have to use it, but outside of that, it's completely optional because what you're getting these research points for is essentially crafting, and you don't have to craft weapons. You can find a lot of stuff just off of enemies or buy it from vendors. However, BioWare has said there are some very specific special things that you can only craft, so keep that in mind. Basically, what I'm trying to tell you is if you don't want to go around with your scanner out at all times and be paranoid about that, you don't have to be. When you do scan objects, you'll gain research points towards one of 3 research categories in the game. The first is for Milky Way tech, the second is for Helios cluster tech, and the third one is for an unknown alien race that you discover by playing the game. With these points, you can go to the Research tab and craft blueprints for armor, weapons, and augmentations, which is something we'll cover in a future video. But each of these are divided by the specific tech that you got the points for. So, for example, if I want to make a Helios cluster weapon, I need to have Helios cluster research points in order to actually make that blueprint. After you've made the blueprint, you need to actually craft the item in order to equip it and use it in the game, and that's what the development side of things is for. In the development menu, you'll find all of your blueprints that you've either found out in the world or made through your research, and then you'll actually need to find the materials that you need in order to craft the weapon. So the process from start to finish looks like this. You're scanning something, you get some research points towards a specific tech, you make that blueprint in the research side of things, then you bring it over to development, find the materials for whatever blueprint you have and then actually craft that item. But again, if you don't want to go out and scan things for research points, you can find blueprints out in the world or buy them from vendors and then take that to the development menu, find the materials for whatever item, and then actually craft the item from that blueprint. Something that I highly encourage people to do, no matter which training you chose at the very beginning of the game, is experiment. Experiment with everything, different weapon types, different abilities, equip new pieces of armor that don't look great, but just see how it feels to you, because there's a lot of depth in this game, a lot more than the original trilogy. So I highly encourage that you try out all different weapon types. Again, there's no restrictions. It doesn't matter what your training was, you can play with all different weapons in the game, no matter what. You'll come across a lot of mods in the game that can be applied to weapons, armor, whatever it may be. And just know that mods are not permanent. They can be applied and removed as you wish. Just scroll over the specific piece in your loadout and click the corresponding button at the bottom of the screen and then drop in your mods. Again, you can equip and unequip them as much as you want. They're not permanent. I'd also encourage you guys, whether you played the original trilogy or not, to try out new and different abilities. Again, there's really no restriction. There is a profile system and a favorite system that we'll talk about in, a future video, because those are pretty complex topics, but you can always respec your class in the Tempest in the medbay right here. You can go to this specific place once you unlock it, choose Ryder. By the way, you can respec your squad mates as well if you made some kind of mistake, and then as you can tell, it's only 20 credits at the very beginning. The cost will increase as you respec more, but this is dirt cheap. This is really cheap, so don't be afraid to experiment with your abilities. Power combos, or detonations, I think that's what they used to be called in the original trilogy, are back in kind of the same way, a little bit different. Let's talk about it right now. Looking through your skills and abilities, it'll tell you on the right side of the screen whether or not this ability is a combo primer or a combo detonator. Combo primers set up for a detonation, so you need to do those first, whereas combo detonators actually execute the power combo and give you that bonus damage. For example, in the tech tree, you'll find Incinerate. The second ability, it says that it primes enemies for combo detonations. That means that this ability is a combo primer. However, above that is Overload, and this ability is a combo detonator. It says that it detonates combo primers. So if you follow up these two abilities, first Incinerate, and then follow up with an Overload, a 1-2 punch, then you'll get a fire combo, which will light your enemy on fire and cause bonus damage. Side note, whichever ability is your combo primer is the actual detonation that you're going to get. So like I said, I started out with Incinerate and then followed up with an Overload. That equals a fire combo because I started with the Incinerate. If I were to begin this with a Cryo Beam and then follow it up with an Overload, that would be a Frost combo or a Cryo combo, whatever that is called. Apparently there's a lot of different combos to pull off in the game. Just try out a lot of different primers and then finish them off with detonators in order to pull it off. Andromeda has a new cover system that is completely different from the original trilogy. No longer will you click a button in order to go into cover, you actually just move into it. It's a contextual system that kind of recognizes if you're behind something that you can use as cover, it will work. The thing is, you need to draw your weapon out in order to go into cover. This is something I had to get used to because I was trying to just run into cover and, in an enemy engagement, if, a dropship comes by and then enemies drop down, I don't really know what to do. I'm rushing into cover. I wouldn't go into cover because I didn't have my weapon drawn out. You need to have your weapon drawn in order to actually slide into the cover. Also, there is no way to crouch, and that is something that I felt early on, like, hey, I want to be able to crouch behind something. In reality, you just need to move up to something, and Ryder will actually duck down. Even some very low stuff, Ryder will get very low in order to actually get behind something and avoid enemy fire. So again, it takes a bit of getting used to. Just kind of play around with the cover system on, some free objects. You don't have to be in combat in order to play around with the system. Just get familiar with it. Also new in Andromeda is the movement system. As Ryder, you are very agile. You can boost, you can jump, you can hover, you can do a lot of different things to get out of situations or kind of close the gap with your enemies. It's a very stark contrast with Shepard, who kind of felt a little bit slow at times. Not terrible, but Ryder is much quicker. There seems to be almost no cooldown for the jump jet. You can boost and jump pretty much infinitely. I mean, jumping and boosting around is not going to help you in combat. You're not going to suddenly avoid bullets because they'll still hit you, but use this to your advantage. It's very quick. Use it to get out of bad situations. In fact, the best way that I've used the new movement system is to, number one, get a higher ground, because as you guys know, getting the high ground is usually an advantage on your enemy. So jump up onto stuff, jump up onto buildings. Almost everything in the game can be jumped on and explored on top of, which again is so different compared to the original trilogy. So get that height advantage, and also also use your movement to find cover. If you're in trouble, locate some cover nearby and then boost over to it, because the fact that you can move this quickly, faster than pretty much any enemy that you're going to face, means that you can find cover very quickly. So use that movement to your advantage. In Andromeda, in order to get more ammo and health, actually, you'll need to find resupply crates. So this is kind of similar to the original trilogy. As you guys know, we had thermal clips, and the original game is a little bit different, but we had thermal ammo, thermal clips. You would go up, just pick it up, and that would resupply your weapon. In Andromeda, it's similar. You need to find these crates out in the world if you run out of ammo. I don't think there's any other way to actually get ammo, at least not that I've discovered. But it also works for health, and this is the big twist. Compared to the original trilogy, you could just metagel if you were low health unless you ran out of it. In this game, there is no metagel. You can't just instantly replenish your health when you're out in the battlefield unless you find a resupply crate. And some of the resupply crates actually don't have health, which is kind of interesting. I think there's some health regeneration stuff that you can spec into, some mods, stuff like that, but there's no metagel for instant health regeneration. You need to find the red icon on a resupply crate, and that will replenish your health. My final tip for getting a head start is just to explore. This game is about exploration, and use that to your advantage. Take the Nomad as far out as you can possibly go on these large explorable maps. Find as many hidden things as you possibly can. Look at the map and uncover as much of that as you can, because I promise you, you'll be going out, you'll be driving. You'll look at the map and you'll be like, did I only go that far? I mean, these maps are really big, and you'll keep going. You'll be like, I didn't know it extended that far. I'm serious, the maps are that big. And also remember, when you're exploring in dangerous, hazardous areas, that you have a fast travel. That's not a spoiler. There's forward operating bases, and you'll be able to plant them down in different areas. Remember that even if you're dying from a hazard, you can fast travel out of there and you'll be completely fine. Even in your Nomad, you can fast travel right out of there and you'll be just fine. As far as I could tell when exploring in my Nomad, some of the worlds have areas that will unlock as you increase the planet viability. So don't be worried if an area you can't actually explore in the beginning is not available. You should be able to come back and explore that. That is just my guess. I don't know that for sure, but I'm fairly sure that's how it's going to work. Alright guys, those were my 10 tips for a head start in Mass Effect Andromeda. This is just a few things to keep in mind, some basics, useful things to remember during your first hours of your journey in Andromeda. I'm so unbelievably excited to share this experience with you guys, so I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, remember to hit that like button. I'd really appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe for a ton of Andromeda tips and tricks, guides, stream playthrough, multiplayer content. You'll find all of it here on my channel, so if you haven't already, remember to subscribe. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.